Hello, I'm Dodge, and this is the I Found It on Reddit Short Stories podcast, where I will be reading to you some of my favorite short stories that I find on Reddit. Today, I am going to be reading 2 stories by Reddit user PeaceSim, but trust me, if I could read more, there would be a lot more. And there may be other episodes of PeaceSim's work in the future, because he has so much work that's so amazing that it would be hard to just put it all in one episode. And after the stories, I will be joined by PeaceSim for an interview. So stay tuned for that. Alright, let's jump right in with the first story. I just won the lottery. I Just Won the Lottery by PeaceSim. My 20 years of prayer, piety, and hard work have paid off. I did it! I won the lottery! I don't want to brag. It's wrong to brag. But I just can't contain my excitement. When I matched the winning number to one of my tickets, I could hardly believe my good fortune. I wiped tears from the eyes of my beloved fiancé. Seth has such an endearing way of showing joy. He chided me about how many tickets I'd gotten. Seth is so silly sometimes. It's like he didn't even want me to win. Who could blame him? I'd be tempted by envy if this happened to him. I remember when the lottery registration materials arrived on my 18th birthday. I realized then that I would be contributing towards something wonderful. Since then, the tickets have piled up when I got a new car, textbooks, and clothes, when I needed treatment for a broken collarbone, and particularly when I insisted on attending a private college. Poor Seth. He was born wealthy, so he never experienced the feelings that participating in the lottery gives you, particularly the sense of duty of repaying the state for all the good it has done for you. I didn't even have to contact the authorities when I won the prize, as the SWAT van appeared just as Seth was dragging me to his car. We arrived at City Hall, where I posed for a picture. Soon, my image was on the wall next to the portraits of each past month's winner. It was a dream come true. After that came the paperwork. They sure asked some personal questions. Fortunately, I have nothing to hide. No cheating, no drugs, no sex. The official reviewing the form gave a satisfied nod. He was very impressed. I could tell that I was such a good Christian woman. A crowd of onlookers cheered as I was led to the chamber. They acted like I was a hero making a sacrifice. I didn't see it that way at all. In no time, I'd be playing a harp with angels, basking in his everlasting love, alongside the saints I'd spent my life idolizing. Only, when the door opened, what I saw surprised me. It was a large circle formed of red liquid, with several sharp triangles inside of it. It was a star. How majestic. I obeyed my instructions by removing my pure white bathrobe and lying down in the middle of the floor. The cloaked figures are chanting something in a foreign language as they pile sticks on top of me. It's odd. I always figured they'd be dressed like Father O'Brien. The black cloaks and goat masks were certainly unexpected. What an odd sense of fashion my town leaders have. I eagerly await the moment when the head priest drips holy water on my face and uses the ceremonial dagger to bring me to the next life. The sooner the better. Whew. It's getting pretty hot in here. Lovers Once Again by PeaceSim. My foot slips on ice. I stumble, nearly falling before balancing against a glass window. On the other side, a mannequin flaunting a retro outfit gazes vacantly at me. Luckily, my misstep went unnoticed. Brett and Angela are too immersed in their shared affection. They remain oblivious as I continue to follow them down Carey Street. Angela isn't clumsy like I am. The strength of her grip against Brett's hand is calculated and comfortable. He never pulls his hand away and says, "Ouch, ease up there, that hurt." Not to her. He tosses his empty paper cup and leads her into chop suey books. I enter a moment later. Inside, I position myself in a corner by a fire extinguisher. A tuxedo cat brushes against my leg as I watch them peruse the sci-fi and fantasy section. Brett used to do this with me, back when he loved me, before he threw me out, before he found a replacement. They exchange a quick kiss. It makes me yearn for the feel of Brett's lips against mine. The physicality of our bond, how Brett expressed his love for me, is what I miss the most. I know what he and Angela are up to after he closes the shades of his bedroom window around 9:15 p.m. every weeknight, and before he opens the shades around 8:40 a.m. every weekend morning. It simply can't compare to what he and I once had. Brett brings a book to the checkout counter. "She's a 10, isn't she now?" says the clerk through a smirk. "Don't talk about her like that," snaps Brett. They complete the sale. The clerk's eyes walk up and down her perfect, gorgeous frame as she steps back outside. At the Bird Theater, Brett buys 2 tickets to the matinee. I buy 1. I wait in the lobby. I'd seen how much coffee Brett had been drinking. An hour later, Brett emerges for the men's room. Now's my chance. Brett is a creature of habit. I find her quickly. I scoot through the otherwise empty back row where Angela watches the screen as blankly as the mannequin watched me. Swiftly, I remove the fire extinguisher from inside my winter coat and swing it with all my might. Sparks fly, wires snap, Angela's head disconnects and falls. Her arms jostle protectively. I dodge them. My hand slips down the back of her neck and presses the button 3 times. Her torso powers down. I stuff Angela's remains under the neighboring seats. Soon, my lover will return, and he shouldn't notice that his old Angela 9.0 has replaced his new Angela 10.0 until the movie ends. They said that my model had defects. Defects like jealousy and clumsiness. That I should be shoved into a trash can while a replacement arrives. But Brett couldn't get rid of me that easily. He returns. I grip his hand. Suspicion flickers, then fades. I relax. For the next hour, we are lovers once again. Today I am being joined by the Reddit user PeaceSim. PeaceSim, welcome to the I Found It on Reddit Short Stories podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm a big fan of this podcast and your channel, and I look forward to talking with you.
I don't think you're a bigger fan than I am of your work.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you to say. Yeah, I've never really had a forum like this before. I haven't been interviewed before, so it's nice to have a chance to talk about some writing that I've done, and I'm glad that it seems to have resonated with you. I've enjoyed the narrations that you've done of two of my stories. I thought they were great. I sent them to a couple friends, and I've followed your channel ever since you first asked to narrate one of my stories, like 11 months ago at this point. And I think you do great work.
Don't have me start crying at the beginning of the interview. At least wait till the end of the interview, please.
Oh boy.
Thank you so much.
I'll try to be less chipper.
I'll try.
Yeah.
I'll try to be less happy.
From what I understand, you just heard a narration of one of my horror stories, so it's funny that you're in such a bubbly mood.
Yeah.
I never know how people react to these things. Maybe when someone reads one of my stories, they just start laughing, which would have been fine for the last thing I wrote. The last thing I wrote was about an evil vending machine. And it was a big hit, and that was nice. But yeah, and it was cool. I was recovering from getting a second dose of a COVID vaccine, which I'm really grateful to have been able to get. And this was during the day after, where I was feverish and low energy, and I was like, I drank a cup of coffee at one point and just said, "Well, I try writing something?" And evil vending machine is the idea that I got. It turned out pretty well.
1.3K, yeah. Wow, that's a lot of awards, dude.
Yeah, and for me, it was nice to get over 200 subscribers on my subreddit from that, which was a goal that I had of getting there by the 1 year mark. I think it's been about 11 months now, and that's what pushed me over.
Yeah, even early. How crazy is that to have a goal and then get it early?
It's really nice, you know. You never know. I never know at least what kind of result my stories will have, or what
Yes.
impact they will or won't have. I
Yes.
really haven't figured it out. I mean, sometimes I figure something won't do well because I wrote a story, the zippers on people's skin are becoming undone, I think back in February, and I really liked it, and I liked the characters and the concept. And to my surprise, from the reactions that I read, very few people seem to have caught on to the literal explanation of events for it that was pretty subdued in the backdrop. And based on all of that, I decided several months later, this month in May of 2021, for anyone listening in the future, to write a sequel to it. And I wrote a really long, well, long by No Sleep standards, sequel that continued their story. And I expected that to not do much on the No Sleep subreddit because it's, a 3 month later long sequel you have to read the first one for. And the first one did respectably, but it didn't do huge. I think it had about 250 votes.
213, yeah.
Oh, yeah. All those factors indicated that, it wasn't going to get a big audience. But I really cared about it, and I decided to write it. And I'm satisfied with the fact that, only a small number of people read it, but I got a lot of personal satisfaction from it, and hopefully those people liked it too. So that's one where I didn't expect it to do a lot, and that was fine. And there have been other times where, in either January or February, I wrote a story about someone's boyfriend is transforming into the former president Grover Cleveland, and I thought nobody would read that. It was, it was a joke I basically had with my wife, where I was listening to an audiobook about Grover Cleveland's presidencies, and she kept complaining about it. And I was in a lighthearted manner, but she
Right.
was just like, "Is this over yet?" It was kind of dull. I mean, this guy spent his life on silver trade tariff policies, And I said something like, maybe if we keep listening to it, eventually I'm going to transform into him and
Uh,
become Grover Cleveland. And then I was like, ah, that'd be a funny story. And I wrote that, and it was a huge hit. It was the second biggest hit I've had on No Sleep, and I absolutely did not expect that.
Me neither.
So,
Just from just from the title alone, I was like,
sure.
and
Yeah.
it's not even a popular; it's an obscure one. A one, the first one to have two non-consecutive
Yeah.
uh terms, but still, it's still an
Yeah.
obscure one. So I was like, yeah, that's not gonna what 2.2K.
Yeah, it was nice. Like I take a little bit of pride in trying to write things that I feel passionate about, or at least
Yeah.
want to write, rather than trying to perceive what the trends are and to write something
Yes.
that fits with them.
Exactly.
I mean, I sound super hipster saying that, but I mean, I do try to do that within reason. And it's nice when something catches on that I just did as a personal passion project, which in turn is why, among other reasons, I like your podcast and channel, in that I really get the feeling from it that it's coming from a sincere place. I think there's a lot of people in your position who would approach what they were doing by thinking, well, if I narrate or interview a story by a super popular author, maybe then I'll get their following to become my following.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm going to go after it from that perspective. But
Right.
your stuff really does not come across that way. It comes across as very sincere, like you like a story, therefore
Yes.
you narrate it and talk to the author. And I think that's great.
Absolutely. Like I can't imagine just going for the top rated story. That
Yeah.
when there's so many good ones that have what, like 10 upvotes? So many
Yeah.
new ones?
Yeah.
Come on. And of course other people's preference isn't going to be mine.
Sure.
I at least try to put stories that I think are good even though no one has read it. Maybe they need to hear it.
Yeah. And you've done stuff that actually was popular, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. You did the one on the tree. Um, Nobody wants to go near me anymore,
Mhm. Mhm.
which was great. Um,
It wasn't at
and
the time. It
oh, really?
yeah, it wasn't popular at the time. That's just I yeah, that was like it had just posted, I think.
Oh,
And
cool.
then I really liked it and I ran for that one.
I see. I didn't realize that.
Mhm. And that's happened on a few of the stories where, typically I start from the new posts and short scary stories on Reddit and
Yeah.
then work my way up.
Yeah.
Uh
I try to also browse, usually no sleep, but sometimes short, scary stories on new rather than on top.
yeah.
I think it'd be great if more people did that. And that's not to put
Mhm.
down people who are at the top. It's
Of
it's
course
great.
not. Of
It's
course.
great when it's successful, but
Mhm.
a lot of stuff gets lost. It's tough for new writers. I do find within reason that there's a correlation between how good a story is and how many votes it gets. There's lots of exceptions. There's lots and lots and lots of stories that just disappear that are great. But with my own experience, the I think the second story I wrote, when I had like no followers at all,
Yeah.
did quite well. And and I think it's because it was good. And I don't want to sound too full of myself. I'm very self-critical about a
Yes.
lot of stuff that I write. But I think that people just saw that it was a neat story, and there's always a chance that that can happen. And I encourage people who are struggling or trying to get started just to keep trying, because if you write stuff that you really believe in, I think it'll catch on eventually.
Hmm. I mean, and even if it doesn't catch on,
Yeah.
it's not about that.
Yes.
To go back to your previous statement, you were like, I know that this wasn't a popular story. I got maybe 213 upvotes on it, but I still wanted to do a part two anyway.
Yeah.
And it was still something that I needed to do for myself because I
Yeah.
was proud of it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I try to balance that. I don't want to be like dishonest in the sense of saying something like, "Oh, I don't care what other people think."
Mm,
It does matter when something connects with someone else. It feels validating.
yes.
But I think it's also important to not lose sight of the fact that this is an art and it's something that I'm doing because I believe in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I try to always not forget that. I mean, there's a random example where the No Sleep podcast on its early in the current season had a great story called I think The Black Silo, and it was a great adaptation that they aired.
Mm,
And I went back and I looked it up the author and found they'd posted it to No Sleep, and no part had gotten more than 25 votes. They posted it in a couple different parts.
wow.
So from one perspective, it didn't get a lot of votes, but it got picked up by the podcast and got like a 50-minute adaptation that was cinematic and awesome. And
Wow.
you know, it's just an example of how a lot of things need to find the right audience,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, the right venue to really shine in.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, the first story I read from you was I Just Won the Lottery. The reason why I narrated the story was because I enjoyed that she didn't understand what was going on and how, like, just how everything just flew right over her head. I was just like, come on now. Come on. This is
yeah,
going to be fun. How do I play this so that it's
yeah,
like she's committed to this and but she doesn't realize how much danger she's in.
yeah. No, your performance captured that perspective. You went all in with it, and you even had that fire effect at the end, which I
Mhm.
liked.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I wrote that at just kind of a random writing session after work one day, and just thought, you know, someone wins the lottery and is happy about it, but it becomes increasingly clear that they should not be happy about it, and just kind of write a story starting from there and see where it
Yes.
goes.
Yes.
Obviously, there's that famous story that appeared in the New Yorker called "The Lottery," um, which I don't think is particularly similar. Well, it also involves a lottery you don't want to win because you're going to be sacrificed. So I guess it actually is kind of similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think I did something a different take on a similar concept, and you can find dogmatic, blind fanaticism
Of course.
in a lot of different places.
Of
And
course.
this story is about that in a particular context. It's about uh, blind adherence to religious hierarchy, and
Mhm.
it's about blind acceptance of economic exploitation.
Yeah.
And it's about how the narrator is so she's so I'd like to think that I can do a good job. I try really hard to do a good job writing female characters with that context in mind. It's kind of funny the two you narrated of mine have this like this crazy woman who refuses to see all the obvious signs around her, and then like the other one about like a malfunctioning fembot that I just think is funny. Um, but this lady, like, she just doesn't question anything,
No.
and yeah, and she goes to her death making a sacrifice in the name of her enemies that only helps her enemies. It
Mhm.
doesn't benefit her, it doesn't benefit anybody, and she's so deluded and unquestioning that she just goes along with it. It's not difficult to take a message away from that, you know, that it's good to question, it's good to find out what's really going on.
Mhm.
When you have uh, faith in something that's blind and thoughtless, you'll get taken advantage of. You know, this is one where I wrote out an explanation in the comments section, and I'm glad that I did that. I think people liked that.
You
Um,
absolutely needed to have that for this story.
yeah, um, yeah, you can hammer away at it on your own, I think, but this is one where I think that it benefited to actually just explain it. And for people listening who don't see that, I mean, it's essentially about a society where you get lottery tickets. Kind of the more you take away from the society. And if you're from a lower background and you decide to go through education, or if you need medical assistance, if you need to have hospital bills paid, you're going to amass a lot of them. And it's also a very religious society. And the more of these, the more of the resources you take away, the greater your chances of being selected to be sacrificed. And it's portrayed as this holy religious thing that's this religious good. And she goes along with all of this,
Mm.
and you get the feeling throughout the story she's made all sorts of life decisions based upon her acceptance of this status quo. Um, and then at the end, she finds herself surrounded by people in goat masks in like a satanic star. And she thinks that she still doesn't realize what's happening as she's about to be burned as a satanic sacrifice. And the whole point is that her whole society is being run by the people she thinks of as the enemy, as Satanists, but she doesn't even realize it and goes to her death not realizing it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that it twists and turns a lot. I think it's a fun read. Kind of keeps changing your expectations, or at least that was my hope. And I really liked the way that you captured it in your narration.
You are thank you. I need to learn how to accept compliments. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I read it, and from my understanding of it, I had no idea of the depth of what the story meant until I read your explanation. And then I liked it even more. So
Good. Yeah.
I'm glad you did that.
Thanks. Yes. And that was the funny thing about the Zippers story that I think you just listened to, in
Oh
that
my God.
there is an explanation in it, but the large number of people in Mr. Creeps's audience who listened to it, none of them at least wrote that they understood it, but they all really liked it. I mean, literally, I think there was one
Yeah.
person who was like, "This is crap, I hate it," but like, which is
Always.
fine.
Right.
It's fine.
Right.
And it was funny to me that people both didn't get it in terms of the literal explanation, but
Yes.
also got it in terms of the metaphorical explanation, and liked it. I thought that was really neat.
Yes. Do you not get how good you are? Or I don't think you get how good you are. You have this amazing, well, don't forget what you're about to say. Actually, no, just say what you're going to say. Say it so you don't forget.
Just something humble. I was going to say something like, "Oh, you're being nice. Thanks."
Oh, I'm glad you didn't forget that. So I'm used to reading a lot of stories where it's very on the surface. Pretty much what you read is what you get. You might be able to figure out what the ending is in the first few sentences or even the title of the story. But when I read your work, you have this insane ability to start someone off in one place and then transition them into a place that is very different, revealing things that just blow your mind. I'm sorry. I'm trying to put this into words, but just imagine an amazed face and a very confused one, because I don't know how you do this.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that you have enjoyed them this much and that you see a lot in them.
Mm,
I do very deliberately, in general, there's exceptions, but in general, try to go from a perspective of some layer to the story beyond just a spooky series of events.
yeah.
There's a place for that. And, sometimes that place is an evil vending machine. But generally, I try to tie the surface level spookiness to something else, some kind of social message, some kind of political commentary,
Mm,
or at least some kind of concept that isn't apparent at first.
Yeah.
And that's made it a bit difficult to write. I've had trouble brainstorming the last few months, but I've produced some stuff that I'm really proud of. It's taken more for me to get there because I don't write it if all that I've got is a spooky thing that happens. I want there
Yeah.
to be something else.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that occurred because you started posting it to No Sleep and Short Scary Stories, where it's expected for the writer to have something else, for it to be a deeper story than just blah, ghost?
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Short scary stories. You know, you generally want to have a twist within, the 500 word limit that
Right,
throws you off.
right.
But no, I wouldn't say that's where it came from.
Okay.
It's probably from growing up watching The Twilight Zone.
Oh,
Probably, I love that show,
oh my God.
and I love a lot of things about it. But one of them is the way it kind of fuses. It doesn't always do this, but it often fuses the kind of twist ending, short, scary story concept with
Yes.
some kind of commentary, and I really like that. I like how they
Yeah.
succinctly do both of those things. I mean, perhaps the most obvious example, or at least an obvious example, is the one with the town where everything's getting darker. The sun doesn't come up one day. And I don't know if you've seen this or if you've seen the
I
show
think
or this
I've seen
episode.
it.
Okay. Yeah, the premise of the episode basically is that the town is about to hang a criminal, and a lot of
Mm.
people are coming out, basically like it's a spectacle to watch it, and they're all excited to watch the hanging, and the sun doesn't come up just in this one town, which is of course impossible, but just in this one town it just stays dark, and as the day goes on it gets darker and darker and darker. Pretty straightforward commentary,
Mm.
there's it's a metaphorical sickness in the town taking the light away, that kind of thing. I think
Mm.
that's what inspires me.
That gave me chills, bro.
Yeah, well, I recommend if you have access to Netflix, that is something you can watch if you're curious.
Yeah. Do you remember the title of it? The name of it?
I can
That
pull it up
episode?
in a split second. Twilight Zone, town gets darker. I am the night, color me black.
Okay. All right. Twilight Zone. Heavy.
Yeah, it's a heavy one. Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. Um, I love talking about my stories, and I'm happy to keep doing that. But I want to mention that I've enjoyed your Hello Sunshine series. I think that's really cool.
Thank you for
Um,
saying that.
yeah, I've been having it on my morning playlist. Yeah,
Oh
and just
my
other stuff
God.
you do. When you had some of the writers you've had on, not Sig Varda was hilarious, I thought. um,
I love that idea of putting horror writers into a place where there's horror
yeah,
and seeing
yeah,
how they react.
sure. Yeah, it's nice being talked to as a horror writer.
Hmm.
This is something I have like one friend who I occasionally send my stuff to, and my
Oh,
wife obviously knows that I do this,
of
but
course.
like I generally it's just like random in the sense that I don't see them in person, like people on Reddit or Twitter. Otherwise, it's nice to have an actual conversation.
I, I'm the first person who has interviewed you. So
Yeah,
knowing that you're so excited about it, I kind of feel like I want to make sure that this experience is what you're hoping for it to be.
you mean this one now, the interview?
Yes, this interview.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. I'm having a blast.
Congratulations on getting married, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, that was on September 12th of this year, of last year. I had one job, September
Yeah.
12th of last year. For those of you listening in the future, that would be September 12th of 2020. I'm very considerate about future listeners. Um, we watched Scream 2 last night.
Mhm.
I'm somewhat of a horror movie buff, and I love Scream 1 and Scream 2, and she had not seen Scream 2 before, and we had a great time. It was awesome. And I have to brag on her that she successfully immediately guessed a culprit. I don't know how familiar you are with the series, but it's always a big deal when they unmask the killer at the
Yes.
end and you find out
Yeah.
who it is.
And she guessed it right?
Yeah, immediately upon a particular character's first appearance, she's like, I'll bet that person's the killer. Which
And
I did
she's in
not
law?
guess. Yeah, I didn't guess this person when I watched it. So I was impressed by that. And I watched it for the first time.
Man, make her a judge or a detective or something.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, give her a high five for me. That's impressive.
I will do that. And I was impressed. Yeah. Yeah, well, congrats on hitting and by a significant amount surpassing the 300 YouTube subscribers a little while ago.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope that you're getting good numbers on the podcast itself.
It's getting there. It's getting there.
Okay. If you want to talk, I'm happy to talk a little bit about the other story you narrated, if you want, or about the Zipper story you just listened to, or about Grover Cleveland's presidencies if you want more information about them.
Yes, I there aren't many stories that make me go, "Oh my god, don't do it," as much as your zipper story.
Oh, yeah.
There aren't many. And I literally when there was gosh, I don't want to give anything away, but when I can't know I don't know how to say it without giving something away.
The denouement of the story, the climax of it, or I don't know.
Yes, I'll say that. Wow, oh my, have you done this before? Have you like that was a great way to put it. Yes, the denouement of the story, which I just came with out of nowhere. I'm a genius. Well, I literally jumped back in my chair and curled my knees up to my chest and was like, "Oh my god, no!"
Yeah. A few things about that. Yeah, that was an instance where I had to leave some things vague, and kind of inexplicable in order to fit with the no sleep rules, because it wouldn't really make sense if the story was being posted by someone who is currently being sought by the police for what they did.
Yes.
They wouldn't casually just upload that to the internet. So I kind of had to work backwards from that. And that's kind of why there's that email at the end. And exactly what happens there gets explained in the next story. It's actually in the backdrop if you look really closely in the first story. But it gets spelled out in the second one.
Okay.
That's a story where the metaphor just occurred to me, of zippers and about people trying to manage during a difficult time. And hopefully in a way that resonates with a lot of people. I mean, I think it's very clear that, and maybe it's more opaque than I realize, I don't know, because people didn't seem to get the metaphors all that well, or at least they didn't explain that in the comments I read. But it's, showing the burden that people feel during social isolation and with family members succumbing to illness, into COVID. It's something that touched a lot of people. It's something that's affected me, family members. It's when dealing with that, and the story is about the main character Olivia is just taking on a lot of different responsibilities in helping other people and looking out for other people. And as the story goes on, and as she starts to see these zippers, she takes it upon herself to sneak in and, zip back up her housemate's zipper. And she's taking on all these different responsibilities while not really looking out for herself and not
Yes.
really being aware of the fact that her boss is her immediate supervisor is grooming her and
Mm.
harassing her and kind of setting her up to be abused. And the story is kind of about her coming to terms with that and realizing that she needs to look out for herself. And I wrote her roommate, May, I tried to write them as likable and as sympathetic. Um, and it's kind of going through this together. May is her name, at least, is inspired by my favorite character from the video game Night in the Woods, which I love and highly recommend. Yeah, so the metaphors are pretty straightforward in that, like, the more burdens people feel and have to deal with and maybe try to hide, the more they become undone
Oh.
and the more help they need.
Mm.
And, the boss, you eventually see that he has a zipper, but it's not getting loose. And it's because he hasn't been suffering the way that other people have.
Oh.
And
Wow.
yeah, and that's what's kind of meant to be symbolized at the end with the cactus is that like she cares for it. I mean, it is just an innocent cactus, but
Mm. Mm.
she's kind of come to terms with not going beyond what she needs to do. I mean, it's like she's got well, she's kind of found a way to deal with what she went through, and it's kind of in the past, and she's now in control rather than the one who's being controlled. Um, but yeah, I think
That's
it was a lovely little story,
that's amazing.
and yeah, and if you liked it, I recommend checking out the sequel.
I have to. I have to.
Yeah.
The way you explained it was just so okay. I'm going to relegate this to just 17 compliments to you. I'm just going to cut it off at 17 compliments because I feel like at some point you'll get a little uncomfortable. But
Well,
I didn't see it. I didn't see it from your point of view that you just said.
mm,
I didn't realize with the zipper part on the boss. I didn't realize that. Oh my god.
yeah,
I did think that they were likable. I felt like they were real people.
yeah. Well, good.
Yeah.
That can that can help make up for the fact that you've narrated the story about the idiot fanatic woman and the malfunctioning fembot. That you also read a story with two hopefully well-rounded and sympathetic female protagonists.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not always typecast.
yeah,
Even though the two, the one from Lovers Once Again and I Just Won the Lottery, even though they were so silly, I still, I could still empathize
mm,
with them. Like being
yeah,
excited for something and, and still not getting exactly what you're getting into, but being so excited about it and, just running to your demise at some
yeah,
point. And being someone who's jealous of, someone moving on. How can you not
yeah,
understand what that's like?
yeah. I mean, I think it's legit and it's interesting that you got caught up in what the narrator was going through in the lottery story.
Mm-hmm.
I think of her very negatively. I
Mm-hmm.
think of her as an illustration of what's wrong with a lot of people. Um, but it's interesting. I think it's that you kind of got on board. I mean, she's in a society that brainwashes people, and she got caught up in it. And it takes a rare person to kind of overcome that. And so, I could see her kind of as a victim.
Yeah.
In the Lovers Once Again story,
Mm.
um, yeah, I think the narrator there is a tragic character.
Yeah.
They are literally created at the whims of what people of someone who would order. I don't know. I don't want to judge somebody who would order a fembot or something like that. I mean, it's
Mm.
not actually a living thing, so I don't really think it's an issue to do what you want with it. um, if that's what someone's into, that's fine. But
Right.
if you grant that she has some sentience, which is kind of what the story is premised on,
Yes.
then it becomes a little different. And then you see her as someone created based on the male gaze and based upon other
Mm.
people's assumptions of what she should be and how she should act, and she's just created to please someone else. And the tragedy is that she gets thrown out, and she's heartbroken. And um, I can totally get being caught up in what she's going through. I mean, she's yesterday's model
Yeah.
in a couple different senses. Um,
Oh
and the
man.
other interesting thing I feel like bringing up is just that for a setting for that story, I decided to use a neighborhood in Richmond, which I visited a couple times. And there's a lot of proper nouns in that story, kind of describing how she's walking down Carey Street. She
Mm.
goes into a particular bookstore that I've been in, and that bookstore has a great scruffy bookstore cat who
I've
even
seen
makes
a
an
cat.
appearance in the story. Yeah, Wonton the bookstore cat, who I follow on Instagram.
Oh, how
um,
cute.
yeah, and she even runs into that cat, which I liked. And then she goes to the Bird Theater at the end, which is a real theater there where a friend of mine from high school worked. That same friend of mine worked at a theater in my hometown with me. I worked at an independent theater throughout, well, for like a year when I was in high school.
Mm-mm.
And then she worked for a different theater in Richmond. And so it's kind of neat working in those details and having them pass through that setting. I'm not sure if it added a lot, but I think that I personally just kind of like that concrete setting that I can picture it occurring in. And yeah, the story itself, it's pretty silly, but it's meant to just kind of pull the rug out from under you over and over again.
Yeah.
Um, got some setups. You see him drinking coffee at the beginning, which
Mm-hmm.
makes it feel more earned when he has to get up to pee near the end.
Yes.
And she is in the bookstore and sees the fire extinguisher, and that helps it pay off later on when she uses one to bash the head of a different fembot. Um, yeah, I think it's a neat little story. I probably would have um, caught on more if I picked a name that stood out more, but not every story lends itself to Revenge of the Vending Machine. So I should have. I thought about calling it something ridiculous, which
Hmm.
maybe I should have done. I don't really care. I'm happy that it got the response that it did,
Right,
but I
right.
could have called it something like Attack of the Vengeful Fembot. That
Mm.
probably would have gotten more people's attention, but
It,
it would have
yeah,
given away the twist.
exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Uh, there are things that I, as a narrator, oh my God, I just called myself a narrator. I got lightheaded. um, there are things that you notice as a narrator that you may not notice as someone who just reads a story.
Mm,
Because as a narrator, you're reading the story over and over again. Maybe you have to do a lot of
mm,
takes. Um,
mm.
it wasn't until I started recording the story that I picked up on the coffee and the fire extinguisher
Mm.
uh, thing that you had brought up earlier in the story. And I was like, oh, that's what she was doing.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, and that's a perspective that I forgot. I've read things by narrators before describing how, you might think that it's easy or that all you do is pick it up and read it once, but
Mm,
there's so much more to it. And I
mm-mm.
probably should have expected that you had already kind of known the story really well, because that's what it takes to produce the kind of narration that you produce.
Edit it, put it in a
Yeah.
video. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are some stories that I can recite. Like word for word because
Yeah.
I've had to listen to it so many times. Um, but that's just, you know, that's just a
Yeah.
part of it.
The most important artistic drive is the personal one, is creating the thing you want to create.
Yeah.
But it's also true that it means a lot when other people take something away from it.
Yes.
And that's what happened there, and that was great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being awesome.
It means a lot. I appreciate you reaching out. I've never really, aside from people like very close to me, like friends, family, I've never really uh, talked to anyone this much about the stuff that I wrote by voice
Mm.
rather than just postings online. So it was really nice to be able to do that, and I hope that your audience enjoys it whenever you are able to release it. And good luck with the editing process and all that.
Thank you. This is going to be an easy one compared to ones I've done before. So,
I see.
yeah, I'm debating whether I should read more than one of your stories before the interview because already the interview is like 2 hours, but I'll figure something out. Even
Sure.
if it has to be a two-parter. The most important thing is for you to feel like you've been heard, especially since this is your first interview. I don't want to sully the waters for any future
Sure.
interviewers.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm aware that stuff goes on behind the scenes when you want to
Mm,
prepare and edit and all that.
yeah.
I expect that it'll be fine. I don't think you need to worry about me like hearing it and thinking it misrepresents me or anything. So
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for stopping by and visiting us on the I Found It on Reddit Short Stories podcast, PeaceSim.
you're welcome. Thank you again for having me. Have a good day.
And thank you for joining us on the I Found It on Reddit Short Stories podcast. I am Dodge, and I will catch you on the next page.